Welcome. It's lovely to have you with us. I'm Nic. I'm a life coach and a wellness educator. And what I like to kind of do in all my sessions is blend personal development, coaching, psychology, a little bit of neuroscience, a little bit of mindfulness, and put that all together when we're looking at these topics. So let's have a look at our session today and what we're going to cover. So we're going to look at our perceptions of work-life balance, what we think that looks like. Is that real? Is it not? But that's going to be really interesting for you to hear from each other as well. Time and energy management, which is always really interesting. We'll separate them out and we'll go into a little bit more detail. We're going to talk about boundaries, something which is always really interesting in this subject, some practical tips and things from a to-do list perspective, which have helped me personally. And then we're going to kind of redefine what success means to you and kind of pull all of this together. So we're going to have a good day. And I think, as always, your interaction with each other really makes the session. So thank you for being so engaging as well. So let's have a couple of minutes just to think about this first question. I always like to open it with something to ponder on. So, what comes to mind when you think about work-life balance? What are the first thoughts that pop into your head? Now, if you want to, as a little experiment, tell us in the chat what pops into your head if I was to say to you, tell me what you think about work-life balance. Oh, Sharon, that's nice. Work to live, not live to work. Tricky. Yeah, absolutely, Claire. Sandra, I don't have one. I run around trying to do a million things. Yeah. Flexibility, it's impossible. Oh, yeah. It's a myth. Yep. Overused phrase. Yep. Yeah. So you can see from each other, there's varying different perspectives on it. I did a social media post on this yesterday, and only 14% of the people thought that it was possible at all. So the options was it is possible, it's not possible, or maybe, but I don't know how. So it was like half and half for the other two, maybe, or it's impossible, but only 14% thought it was possible, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing your ideas on that. It just gives us a starting point and it'll be good for us as we go through the themes of today to have this conversation together. So just take a little note on what other people are saying. I always think that's really interesting. So it's something I think someone said, it's an overused phrase. Absolutely. It's something that we have all heard of, yet for many people seems very much out of reach from normal everyday life. When your workload is sky high or you're navigating some kind of family situation or relationships, just trying to keep on top of friendships, your to-do list is still growing. Balance can feel absolutely like a little bit of a myth. But maybe what we're going to talk about today is changing the definition of balance as we see it, and therefore changing how you look at it as a result. Because at its core, work-life balance isn't about splitting your time in some kind of ratio that works for you, or achieving some kind of perfect vision of a day. It's really about alignment. And alignment really is making intentional choices that reflect what matters most to you, but right now, at this period of your life, knowing that it's going to change and adapt and evolve and stretch and constrict, and it's always moving, and that's okay. So, I want to start by inviting you to try and switch this concept in your mind just for now, and we'll see how we feel at the end. Because if you switch this concept, balance changes from balance to alignment. And does that feel a little bit different when you think about it? So, if I was to say to you, what comes into your mind when you feel about alignment, it feels certainly to me personally like some of the pressure is relieved from finding that balance. It's more about the choice of stepping into a better, maybe more aligned version of how you want to live. Does that make sense? So switching this idea of balance for alignment, we're going to talk about it a little bit more, so don't worry just now. So this traditional view of work-life balance, I wanted to touch on this a little bit because I feel like it kind of it assumes that work and life exist on, opposite sides of the scale here that you can see. So I put here what's the ratio. So for some people, everybody's different. And for some people, the crude way to do it would just be, 50-50, work-life balance, 50-50. That's what I'm trying to achieve. For other people, it would be 80-20, 60-40, and whatever. But it's more nuanced than that, really, anyway, because work is a part of your life, of course, and your personal life is a part of your work life, and they can't be separated easily. Now, that sounds like real common sense, but I've had people say to me that, I live in these kind of areas of my life very separately, but you can't really because your feelings and emotions and thoughts are all jumbled up together. So they can't be easily separated, even if you're trying. So instead of aiming for some kind of, ratio balance idea, it might be better to try and ask yourself this question. So, first part of the question is, what do I need to feel steady, energized, and present right now? So just have a little bit of think about what comes into your mind. What do I need to feel steady, energized, and present right now? For some of you, it might be sleep, rest, just 5 minutes on my own. The very basics all count here. Now, another question I can ask you here is, do I feel aligned with what I need to be doing at this point in life or career? Do I feel aligned with what I need to be doing? And this can be a tough one. So please always, be gentle with yourself in all of these because a lot of people have things that they want to be doing or feel like they should be doing or could be doing, but just cannot get to it for real life situations. So, that can be understated that sometimes it's just not going to happen for some reason that's out with your control. But if you keep this idea of alignment in your mind, even when life pulls you out of balance, you've got a bit of a roadmap to get you back. So think about it like you put the sat nav postcode where you're going into your car and you have no idea of the route. You've never been there before. It's all a little bit wobbly, but you kind of have the trust in the system. Most of the time it works. You have the trust in the system that that will get you to where you're going. So this idea that you have in your head, that's like that kind of postcode that you've put in. You've no idea how you're going to get there because life is, throwing you all of these curveballs, but at least you have the destination in mind. And I like that because it kind of keeps you on track when, things pull you out of alignment. So I just want to give you a little bit a minute to think about that. What I want to do is work together today to try and come up with another way to construct something different in our minds so that you can start to think about balance a little differently day to day. And try to keep a little eye on the chat as we go, but apologies if I cannot. Michelle, can you repeat that bit about the sat nav? Yes, so I always have this vision of, where I'm going is like a destination. So it's like a postcode that you put in your sat nav. You've never been there before. You've no idea how you're going to get there, but it's the vision of what you put in. You have this trust that the machine will get you there, the tech will get you there. So it might take you 20-mile route, a 25-mile route. You don't necessarily know the journey, but you have the faith that you know the destination and you're going to get there. So I always like to think about it, if there's roadworks, it'll say rerouting and there's a diversion and it'll take you on a different path. You still eventually will get to the same outcome because you're determined enough to, I'm sticking with the postcode and that's where I'm going. So hopefully that helps. That's something that's helped me along the way, just when, you're pulled out of shape in lots of different directions. So this is important. This is what I want you to remember, that balance is dynamic, because sometimes I think the way I've heard people talking about it, it feels like it's very fixed, like something, very concrete that they have to achieve. But balance is moving and shifting and evolving all of the time. And I think it's important to remember that, some days or even weeks or elements of your life need more focus on other parts of your life, whilst, at times, you might be called to put a bit more attention into your business, that big idea, you want to get it moving. And other times, just because, we're human and this is how life works, you have to concentrate on finances or relationships or friendships or networking or expansion or tech or whatever that might be. It might also be rest and recovery because you're exhausted from, the past few months. Think about it like, and what I normally do with clients is we always break it down into little chunks of time. So because it's June now at the minute, June, July, and August would be the time frame that we are working on, and then September, October, November. So 3 or 4 month blocks, depending on what we're doing. But I think it's helpful to do it that way because you're asking yourself, what's going on at this phase in my life? So this little block of time, if we use it just for example today, up until the end of August, what does this phase of time need from you? Remembering that, like we said, it's always shifting, it's always changing, it's always developing. And knowing that there's no one answer, that's going to fit all of you on this call. All your needs are going to be a little bit different. So if there's no ideal to strive towards, then how can you develop something that's personal for you? So if you think about, okay, I'm in this phase right now, what is this going to look like up until the end of August? Knowing again that this is going to be moving, changing, adapting, shifting. So try and think about it like, if you can remove the preconception of what you think it looks like, it reduces the pressure to get it right. So your preconception of work-life balance, let's say hypothetically, when we started the call, if you can remove that a little bit, it takes that pressure off trying to, get yourself there. It's like kind of chasing a moving object that's always going to be running ahead. So when does that end? When do you stop chasing this vision or ideal? And it's when you stop chasing it. So think about it today. If you can stop chasing the idea of what you think work-life balance is, and we're going to reframe it and work together to see if we can help come up with a different way to think about it. And this idea that balance is dynamic is really important because it's a reminder that balance requires awareness. First of all, we're having the conversation, which is great, but continual adjustment. So for example, in yoga, if we're all standing on one leg, think about all the little muscles and tendons in the foot and ankle. And it's really interesting if you remember at some point randomly later when you're making a cup of tea, stand on one leg as you're just waiting for the kettle to boil and feel all the little movements in your ankle, all the little tendons working really, really hard to keep you stable. All of that adjustment and weight shifting and all of that happens automatically, but microsecond by microsecond, it's always adjusting, always rebalancing. And this is kind of what your life is like. You're always adjusting, rebalancing in every second of every day because the circumstances are always changing. So this is what I want to invite you to think about balance differently. If you think about it deliberately, as often as you can, and kind of allow your perception of it to shift to come back again to that idea of alignment and think about, does this match where I want to be right now? So does this idea that I have in my head match where I want to be right now? So, some of you I know will be trying to achieve certain things and just not finding the time. So, if I was to ask you guys, do you feel aligned? I think some of you said, no, I don't feel aligned. I'm so busy, I can't get to it. So at least there's an awareness there that there's a gap between where you're at and where you're going. And it's about trying to see that a little bit differently. I don't want to achieve this, 50-50, 60-40 ratio, for example. I want to achieve alignment for myself and readdress it continually. Because if you think about work-life balance just as one kind of static thing to achieve, or something that you've kind of imagined in your mind, it's unlikely to turn out like that in real life. So it's kind of like push that to the side just for now, and let's see if we can create a new picture of what that could look like. So it's something that you kind of have to start to think about it like you're going to micro adjust, like your ankle, every single day, because your life is different. You're getting new opportunities, you lose some opportunities, you come up with an idea, you forget about another idea. It's always shifting and it's always moving. So if we're reframing this together, think about balance is what's going on in your life right now. What are you prioritizing? Where are you just, with the life stuff and all of the normal kind of curveballs and all of that? Where do you want to go next? What's possible for you, which is different because what's possible for you might not be where you're headed. And that could be down to fear or lack of resources or just time or, other constrictions. But you have to really give a little bit of focus to your intentional, deliberate choices. Now, that's really important. Intentional, deliberate choices, because we do always have a choice, even in really difficult circumstances. Now, that choice might be, I need to put everything on hold for a week until I get through this kind of mental barrier, or I'm going through something really tough right now with a family member with a health issue, for example. I need to just pause. That's also a choice. But the difference is with that, you take the power back, therefore you restore balance a little bit more. So here's a big question for you that I want you to write down, or at least have a little think about, or rewatch on the recording later. Where are you in your life right now? Now, this is a big question, I know, but if you try to condense this into one or two sentences, what would you write? So if you're trying to explain this to someone who doesn't know you, doesn't know what you're all about, doesn't know what your business is, doesn't know what you do, where are you in your life right now? And the idea of trying to focus this in on one or two sentences is really to challenge you to focus on what is going on with me right now. And it's a tough one. So don't worry if you're like, oh my God, I have no idea. There's so many things. Just write the question down and come back to it. Come back to it later. Gemma, that's a nice example. Thank you for sharing that. Looking after my well-being currently, so that as per your words, I can take the power back. Yes, while still trying to focus on work. And that will shift as well. Gemma's lovely example, it might not be that case next month, when you're feeling rested, you're sleeping well, you're looking after yourself physically. It could be like, okay, I'm going to readdress my focus and change onto something else. So just remember that, where am I at in my life right now? Knowing that, again, I feel like that's a big question to be asking yourself all of the time. But what I would sometimes do is ask people to put the reminder in their phone with the question. And at the end of August, ask yourself that question again, so that you're giving yourself periods of time to ask that and say, am I heading in the right direction? So something else I want to ask you to think about is, what would balance look like for you right now based on where you're at? What would balance look like? Rosalind, I can see that face. You're thinking very hard. What would balance look like for me at the moment based on where you're at? And just remember, be kind and gentle to yourself when you're answering these questions. Jody, the question was, what would balance look like for me at the moment based on where I'm at? Beth, if that's okay, let's use your example as well, because um, you've put a really personal thing in here. Just had cancer surgery, but still concentrating on my business and finding it tough. Concentrating on business is helping me through this, but is it a healthy approach? Balance to me would be sitting on the beach reading a book rather than writing one right now. And Beth, it's probably a little bit of both for you, because I assume from what you've said, writing is your thing, and hopefully I'm right on that. But, any kind of health issue, and I'm hopeful that, everything's gone well and that's all going to be good for you in the long term. But you can't lose your sense of who you are. I've worked with people in similar situations, and it's that identity piece is really key. So if you think about what makes me feel like me, following something like that, you stay really connected to yourself. Some days that could just be, like you said, going to the beach and taking all of that kind of beauty in, and you'll appreciate more probably than you did before that. That's pretty common in a situation like that. But also, if you're feeling creative and you've got energy, throw yourself into your work for an hour or a day and find that kind of picture, that kind of jigsaw puzzle that makes sense for you. No one can really tell you other than yourself, am I pushing it too much? You will know, am I um what's the word, like ignoring that whole element? Is that too much? You'll know personally. Your gut instinct is normally quite strong, so go with that. And thanks for sharing that. Now, final thing I want to ask you in this little stage of talking about, balance and being dynamic is, what do I need to do next? What do I need to do next? So, Beth, that might be a good one for you to think about. What do I need to do next? It could be rest, just recover, let your body heal and give yourself some time. It could be, give myself some creative time. It could be a mixture of both. What do I need to do next? Holly, thank you. That's a nice example as well. Holly's written, balance would be being able to have time, headspace, and energy to work on my own goals and interests, including starting self-employment for 3 or 4 blocks a week. By block, I mean either an evening, yeah, after work, yeah, a little block of time. At the moment, all of my time feels accounted for by work, family, ADHD, yeah, or renovation work. Oh, yes, I hear you, Holly, on that. And we're going to come to this, Holly, we're going to come to something that I think will help you next. So this is good, and I want to spend a little bit more time than we normally would on these questions, because it's really important that you understand where you're at in order to know the next exercises that come, how to use them for your benefit. So let's jump into the next stage, because I want to bring a little bit of focus onto time next. So another question for you. We're doing lots of questions today. What is your relationship with time? Now, this is a really interesting one to ask yourself. You maybe never have thought about it, but if I said, tell me how you spend your time, how do you feel about time, what do you think about time, what would you say? So personally for me, for this one, a little insight from me is, I feel like I never have enough. I always feel like it's running out. That would be, so I probably have a difficult relationship with time that I need to kind of keep an eye on, because it means that I can push myself sometimes too hard when I don't keep that awareness on um that kind of, am I using my time wisely? Because I naturally have this kind of preconception of there's not enough. So this is something that comes up quite often with women that I work with, is it's this idea of like a constant sense of busyness. Like, I have to keep going, I have to be doing it all, everything depends on me. Very, very high expectations, and a belief, like my own, that, there's not enough time, there's not enough hours in the day. I think I see some of you saying similar things in the comments. And even when it's unintended, this can have a real kind of pressurizing effect. Now, pressure can also, of course, come from external sources, work, family, partners, all of that. But a lot of the time, it also comes from the inside. So, does this resonate? Do you put pressure on yourself to be able to achieve everything? And I think it's helpful to ask yourself, where did this pressure come from? You might know, you might not have thought about it, and now you might be the first time you're thinking about it. Where did this pressure come from? Sometimes it traces it all the way back to childhood and parents, and you must achieve and all of that, which again, well intended, sometimes can have um, an effect on, what you believe as you grow up. But how do you feel about this pressure when you think about it? Sometimes it can make you feel sad, sometimes it can make you feel frustrated, because why is it always on me? Why is it all on my shoulders? Yeah, it's your own expectations, absolutely. Can feel a little bit overwhelming. Guilt is a common one, Sharon, yeah, for not spending all my time on my family. And I think we talked about this last time, but just in relation to that quickly, I always tell people to, think about your family are up here on the importance level. And this could be, your work or parents or whatever. But the people who you think the most important, they're up here and that doesn't change. All that you're trying to do is bring yourself gradually up to meet them. You're just as important. And many people are like, oh my God, I've never thought about it that way. Because normally everyone else is up here and you're like hanging around down here somewhere. And that's not okay. It's not sustainable in the long term. You want to be trying to creep yourself up. They don't lose their status, but you're just as important. So if you're just as important as your family, what needs to change? That's a whole other conversation, but I think that's worth putting in there. So what I want to highlight here in this part is that time management alone isn't the key to finding the balance. I've done, multiple workshops on time management and stuff for various companies, and that's helpful to some degree, but it's only a part of the picture because what's usually missing, if someone's trying to manage their time or introduce project management tools or all of these kind of things, it's not accounting for how you actually feel. So remember we talked about in one of the other sessions that your actions are very strongly influenced by your feelings anyway. So it's the feelings that need to be looked at as well as obviously all the real life stuff. So you'll probably understand, we've all had days where technically you have time. You might have 2 or 3 hours left in the evening, but you have no energy left to do what you need to do. So you have to become more and more aware of what's really going on. So is it a real life situation that you're working through that's taking a lot of your time? Is it a lack of energy, or is it about limiting belief on your side? Or is it something deeper? So when you have physical time, what's stopping you? So you have to really tune into how you're feeling and ask yourself, where is this lack of action coming from? So I've got a few examples here. Is it low energy, low mood, tiredness, limiting belief, a family situation? What is taking up your time? I haven't even mentioned social media on here, but that's a huge one, obviously. Sometimes that's a real life issue that's taking up a lot of our time because obviously the big companies are spending millions and maybe more on keeping us hooked, and that's a whole other problem as well. But at least if you're aware of it, then you can try to change. So next, I want to talk about energy. Now, this is really, really important and something that you can use all the time, something I use personally at least a couple of times a week, 2 or 3 times a week. So I want you to think about this. You have a certain amount of time to spend, of course, as we all do, but you also have a separate resource of energy. So there are two different sources. So I want to analyze where your energy is being spent. So for this exercise now, I want you to consider you can do it a couple of ways. You can imagine that you get £100 every morning and that's yours. The minute you get out of bed, it's sitting by your bedside. Or you have 100 points of energy and this gets refreshed by the bank every single morning, however way you want to look at it. But on average, how are you spending this energy every day? What are the patterns? So I've put up a real life example here with someone I did this with recently. This was her reality at the time. So you can see her current job was taking up 56 percent of her time. New business only 6%, exercise 4.5, self-care 3.4, kids 18, her relationship only 11%. So when you put it all kind of down like that, it's a bit like, oh, okay, am I okay with that? So I want you to think about your energy circle. So think about it in a pie chart kind of format. And remember the numbers don't have to be perfect. I just made percentages of these based on a ratio of data that she gave me. But how are you spending yours? How are you spending your £100 or 100 points? So draw this out. Maybe you could come back to it kind of later. Now, obviously, it's going to be a little bit different every day, but broadly, on average, how are you spending it? So I forgot I put that in there. There's a little, if anyone has watched Harry Potter, there's a little golden snitch that flies around and they use it in the game as a, I don't know how to say it, Quidditch, something like that. You guys will know more than me. So, but this little golden ball thing that flies around, when I seen it, I thought, oh, that's the energy. So sometimes I'll use that with people because if you think about this little ball's like it's buzzing, it's vibrating, it's always got this energy, but it can also fly off at any point. You have to keep that under control and you have to think about that as the most precious thing that you own. So if it's more valuable than gold, diamonds, all the money and the jewels in the world, this is your most valuable asset. Why are you spending it in a way that you don't, maybe that doesn't align, let's say, with where you're going? Now, of course, there's things in there that you might not be able to change or adapt right away. But sometimes when you see it on paper, you're like, ah, okay, I need to potentially change or shift some of this spend. Could you, for example, take from one section and put it into another? So if social media, for example, was a big one on yours, even if it's only 5% or 10%, it's probably more. Um, just very quickly, if you look on your phone, I only learned this maybe about a year ago, you could see how much time you're spending on social media. If you go into, I can't remember how to do it, but you go into settings and you can see how much time am I actually spending on each app. It can be a little bit scary because suddenly there's a block of time that you could reallocate energy wise as well to something else. So I want you to really think about this as your, if it's your most precious resource, are you okay with how you're spending it? So this is what I call personal energy design. So it's your chance to consider, plan it in advance, and then continually kind of readdress any changes, any life events. Think about it like it's always a work in progress, but it's a tool that you can use all of the time. How's my energy looking? Okay, I'm okay with that. Because some weeks, if you're traveling, for example, or you're looking after a parent or there's something going on, it will look different. But you look at it and say, I'm okay with that this week because everything's different. Could be that, a brother's in hospital, I'm looking after him, everything's on hold for now. So I'm happy giving 90% of my energy to him right now. That's okay. But it feels like a deliberate choice that way, and your awareness is switched on because you're continually thinking about it. And that's really what's important here because it's the idea of you're feeling empowered to make your own choices rather than being on autopilot. So you're seeing the situation for what it is, you're changing what you're able to, but over time, think about that sat nav long term again, you're shifting in the direction that you are choosing. Now that's personal strategy and that's important. The alternative to this is just, that you're on autopilot every day, which is, largely fine for a lot of people. You might have a rough idea of what you need, it pops into your head every now and then, but you're not deliberately creating or designing this kind of energy expenditure. So you end up feeling a little bit not in control. Life is happening all around you, and you feel a little bit kind of lacking direction or lost sometimes. So think about it like you're taking the power back when you do this expenditure, essentially. So here's the shift that I want you to consider. Instead of managing only your time, start managing your energy as well. So if they become equally important, how does that change how you look at how you conduct yourself and what you're doing day to day? So another nice way to look at this sometimes is if you imagine that you wake up with a certain amount of energy every day. So ideally starting the day with, imagine your little kind of battery on your phone is 100%. So if you're starting the day with your battery 100% charged, maybe actually it's already drained. Maybe you're not sleeping very well. Maybe you're stressed. So how would you say broadly on average you wake up? Is your battery fully charged at 100%? Now, when I say wake up, try and think about it like within 15 minutes of when you wake up, that's your kind of, when you'll feel the most energetic in theory. So are you 100%? Are you 80%? Are you 40%? Let's know in the comments. This is always an interesting one too. Sometimes you forget that it's not normal, not okay for you to wake up with 30, 40% energy. There's something else going on there, whether that's stress or, something else. But just a little reminder, for us all, we all deserve to have a good level of energy and understand what's causing that misalignment or that, yeah, that deficit. Mm, yeah, different. 20%, 30, 50, more energy at night. My battery is low, yeah. Caroline 85. Nikki, I would love to wake up feeling energized. And sometimes I think that we forget, and generally, of course, I'm speaking for all of us women when I say generally, I feel like we take on quite a lot. So you get used to feeling a certain way, but you deserve to wake up and feel energized. Nikki and everybody else, you deserve to wake up and feel that way. Mm. So if your energy isn't as you would like it, just know that you're working towards something else and you're not okay with this. Because again, you're more important than maybe you've given yourself credit for. So, what I want you to think about this idea of the battery. Some things will recharge you and give you some energy back. It could be, if you eat well, if you go out for a walk at lunchtime, if you're giving yourself a little bit of space, that'll give you a couple of, points back in. But other things will drain you faster than you expect if you have a difficult conversation at work or something's gone wrong personally or, lots of different things. But think about it like everything that you encounter every day will either give you energy or will deplete you. So it's your job to try and keep this energy balanced in a little bit more kind of awareness, conscious, deliberate thought every day. Now, it sounds like it's going to be a lot of effort, but now it's kind of just a thing for me that where I'm continually kind of monitoring it, like the temperature in the room, you just kind of continually monitor, oh, I'm feeling like I need a little bit of a boost, but I'm gonna share a secret that I've got for this. I think it's coming up soon. So I'll tell you how I deal with this, but I want you to think about what are the things in your life or business that are draining your energy, even if they don't take that long. Where are those big energy vampires? What are they? And then I want you to think about what gives you energy. So that feeling when you're like, oh, I feel recharged. Could be 5 minutes hiding in the bathroom. It could be eating something nourishing for your lunch. It could be going for a walk, talking to a colleague, phoning someone in the evening. Doesn't have to be big things, but what gives you energy, even if it's only for a few minutes. For some people, common ones I hear are like, ironically, online Zoom meetings, and here we are, but hopefully this isn't going to be draining your energy too much. But lots of, back-to-back appointments, back-to-back meetings. Social media is a real energy zapper on occasion for people. And you end up kind of frustrated with yourself sometimes that you can't break that cycle. So the key here is to really keep your awareness high. So you probably need to plan in more of the energy givers, energy boosters, and monitor those kind of drainers, those things that are decreasing your battery a little bit. So try to maintain a kind of ongoing sense of balance and don't beat yourself up when it can't be done. That's really important. It's not possible to maintain it all of the time. But if you're doing this for the long-term benefit, then hopefully this will even itself out the more that you bring conscious awareness to it. So if the week is going to be tough, for example, for whatever reason, you might say, this week is going to be tough because X, Y, and Z. So I need to plan in A, B, and C to help keep me balanced. So it sounds simple, but because many of us are, professional jugglers, multitaskers, people who can take a lot of things on your shoulders, you will do it without questioning. So you will sacrifice yourself and your own balance because you can cope with it. That doesn't mean it's okay. Just because you can cope with it doesn't mean it's okay. It doesn't mean it's sustainable and it doesn't mean it's looking after yourself. So it's likely that it needs a little bit of attention. So I've just put a reminder on the questions here. These are actually on your worksheet that you'll get emailed out after, so you can have a little think about this in a bit more detail. But things that drain your energy, things that boost your energy, and can you make any adjustments? So I want you to think about this as strategy. This is personal strategy. The more awareness you kind of build around these energy patterns, the more that you can start planning your days around what actually works for you and your energy expenditure, not just what fits in your diary. Maintaining this energy and what we've been talking about, it really isn't a luxury. It's not indulgent. It's very strategic, actually. So remember on the last call, if some of you were here, we talked about that Friday CEO time where you take that time out and do that kind of overview of where am I at, what's going on. You have the board meeting with yourself. This could be part of that. Now, this is something that I do. I think I told you this before. I'll plan my calendar, usually on a Sunday, and I say, okay, what's going on this week? And I'll plan little blocks of time in. So I think I've got it. I do coming up, but I plan something called just white space or empty space where I'll just put like um Nic free, for example, between 1 and 2. So if I put that in there, I know that I have to either go for a walk, take the dog out, just take a break from the screen, do something that fuels me or gives me that little energy book. It might just be, reading a book or a magazine or something that kind of allows you to decompress a little bit. Now, the agreement I have with myself that if it's in the calendar, I must do it. Remember, we've been talking about things like building self-trust and knowing that you're doing the right things for yourself. It's almost like a non-negotiable now. It's kind of like that James Clear idea of you make the commitment to yourself and you follow through, and the self-trust and confidence starts to rise. If it's in there, I do it regardless of what comes up, and I'm really busy and I want to do other things. If it's in the calendar, then I've already made that commitment. So, that's a timeout. So that's a really good strategic kind of thing to bring into your week that I'm going to pre-plan my energy. So if I have an all-day event, for example, then I won't take any evening calls. Or if I have an all-day event, I'll maybe start a little bit later the next day. But if I don't plan that in, then my diary's just going to fill up, and before you know it, I'm in autopilot mode again, and then I'm exhausted by the end of the week, and that has happened. So I've kind of learned the hard way. But once you get into the rhythm of the pre-planning, it's kind of like, oh, my own personal energy also deserves a strategy. That's where that kind of taking that power back for yourself comes from, and it feels really good. So that's something that you can think about. Boundaries, I want to talk about this quickly because these are really powerful tools that you have for protecting your energy also. So I know sometimes that talking about boundaries can feel a little bit weird or uncomfortable for people because it can bring up things like, guilt or confrontation or, I don't want to let people down and all of that. But boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're actually about protecting what matters to you most and protecting your energy. So think about boundaries as the limits that you set to protect your time, your energy, and your well-being. So they define what's okay and what's not okay, and they help you stay aligned with your values and goals and what you want to achieve. They're not selfish, they're not indulgent, they're not, aggressive or any of these things. And also, they don't have to come with a long explanation. In fact, if you think about it, boundaries done really well can actually improve your relationships because you're very clear with that other person or party, and you're showing up and you're more present, and there's maybe a little bit less resentment sometimes because you're being very clear about what's okay and what's not okay. So saying no maybe to things that are going to drain your energy, but maybe you feel obliged to do. It could be setting very clear working hours and sticking to them. And that might mean, closing the laptop at 6 or not replying to messages that are on your phone at 10 o'clock at night because, that's setting your mind off on another spiral. So protecting that me time that we were talking about in the calendar, and that could be, just a walk, a workout, a slow morning, just a cup of tea, doing absolutely nothing. Remember, that's okay too, without having to explain that to anyone. So think about them like they don't have to be bold or dramatic or anything like that. They're quiet agreements with yourself that say, I matter too, my time and energy matter too. And that's really important. So just think about if there's anything that you um consider right now that could be changed. Just maybe take a little note of that. So what's one boundary that you could put in place this week? Now, this could just be one little block of that time. And if your time is short, make it 15 minutes, start small. You have to start somewhere because that fact that you're important will never go away. You're going to be important forever. So start to kind of, get yourself used to this right now. And I want to always pause on this and make it really real because it might just be something small that starts the momentum, like taking a lunch break without your phone. Sounds wild, I know, but try it. Don't keep your phone next to you when you're watching TV at night. Put it away somewhere else. Not checking emails after a certain time, not spending too much time on social media, or, it could be something bigger like not saying yes to something because you feel like you should. And it might be a little bit awkward at first, it might be a little bit strange, but here's some things that you can use. So, what I call like kind but firm language. So, here's a couple of examples. I'm sorry, I would really love to help you, but I don't have capacity right now. I'm sorry, I'd really love to help you, but I don't have capacity right now. 9 times out of 10, people are going to say, my God, I totally understand. They know what that feels like, remember too. Another good one is just, I'll be offline after 6, but I'll reply first thing in the morning. Really simple. But that internal pressure to reply is is sometimes going to win. Or if it's a personal thing, it could be something like, I'm really sorry that doesn't work for me right now, but thanks so much for thinking of me. It could be like, thanks for the invite, I'll get back to you, and then really go away and think about it, rather than yeah, 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 I'll be there, and then you said, oh my God, now I have to be there because I said yes. You didn't give myself any time. Clarity is a really good thing for you and the other person. So get into the habit of setting these boundaries that protect that really precious little golden ball. Remember that energy and give yourself space to show up calm, focused, that powerful, energized version of yourself so that when, I ask how your energy is, you can say, I feel more energized than normal because I'm protecting it. I'm protecting that little energy. And the visual really helps for me just imagining this little golden ball. I'm going to protect that. That's my job. So this is working on your balance. So practical tips, I want to give you some of these. So to-do list. Do you all love to-do lists? Many, many people, myself included, really do. So I'm sure you all know the benefit of, staying organized. And I wanted to share some of these practical things that have helped me and helped me to keep this balance. So first one is the 3 Ds. So you can sort your to-do list into these sections. Do it, delegate it, or ditch it. So sometimes if I, my to-do list kind of looks like just a big long list, and then I kind of extract from it. So do it, ditch it, or delegate it. Sometimes the ditch it, I'll put it in another list that's called later. That just grows. There's things on that list I think that have been on there for like 2 years, but that's okay. It just comes later. So I'll come back to it when I can. And this helps me kind of prioritize the things that I can do in the day over things that I could do, 6 months down the line. I also frequently try to look for things that I can hand over to other people. Now, because I work myself mainly, this is normally like personal life stuff, but it still frees up my time and energy. So it's good to practice asking, listen, can you help me with X, Y, and Z? Next thing is something called the big three. So again, if you've got this big list of things that are all to be done, don't be afraid, first of all, to let that list grow and just Change your mindset on it a little bit. You will never get to the end of that list ever. So you can call it your life list, for example. There will always be something on there as long as you're alive. So if you accept that now, as long as you're alive, this life list will exist. So that's a good thing. Your job is to pick out the first or the three core things that you want to achieve today, and then your life list will continue. So tomorrow you pick out the three things that you're going to achieve, and then the list just continues. It doesn't ever go away. It's just a sign of life. You're not trying to get to the end. You're trying to look after yourself in the process. And then the third one was the plan, where this is what I was talking about. Plan your to-do list over the week if you can. So, using my example of planning that on a Sunday, I'll plan in those little spaces of time for myself. So, sometimes I don't know what they're going to be. Sometimes, if I can fit in a class or something like that, I'll plan it in advance. And once it's in the calendar, that's my binding contract with myself. So, I kind of see this as that kind of personal strategy of looking after myself over the course of the week. And eventually this just becomes part of your routine and your awareness just gets higher and higher so that you're more aware of what's going on and how you're feeling. So a good way to think about this as well is, what does a good day look like? What does a good week look like? And see what comes up. Petra, yes, I do 3 items off my list every day. Again, that takes the pressure off. Yeah, that's what I found too. Because sometimes when you look at the big giant list, it can feel really overwhelming. When am I ever going to get to the end? But when you kind of know, well, I'm alive, I'm here, I'm never going to get to the end because that's life, it just suddenly enables you to look at it a little different. So this quote really captures what I wanted you to take away from today. That balance isn't out there somewhere, waiting to be discovered. It's something you intentionally shape moment by moment, choice by choice, when you're giving yourself this time to really think about it. But here's the kind of catch, if you like. You have to let go of some of the things that are weighing you down and zapping your energy. And for many of us, that's things like comparison, personal expectation, an idea of what success looks like that is not the real life, behind the scenes. So, what can you let go of? It could be a little bit of guilt, it could be pressure, it could be this idea of success or the idea of work-life balance that you had. But we live in a world where we're continually subjected to what other people's kind of highlight reels are in business spaces, in our own circles and personal life. And it's easy to get caught up in the trap of, she's doing more. Why can't I do that? How is she fitting this all together? Why can I not do that? But the balance isn't a competition. It's not about keeping up. It's more about keeping your experience of it personal to you. So instead of asking yourself, am I doing enough? Ask yourself, am I doing what's aligned with me, with what matters most to me? Am I living in a way that feels true to myself, energizing, true to my beliefs and values? Am I living that way? And that is really what success is defined as on personal terms. So if you think about, what do I want my life to look like? What do I want my day to look like? What do I want my week to look like? You're allowed to move slower. You're also allowed to move really fast when you want to. You're allowed to spend more time building your business. You're allowed to choose, time away or time relaxing over trying to prove yourself. What are you trying to prove and to who? And allow yourself to create something unique that fits for you. Because when you kind of give yourself permission to release this idea of what you thought it was, you can create a whole new picture of what it is now. And that's one that you choose, that's not copied from anyone else, that's sustainable, that's impressive to you, not to anyone else. So hang on to this kind of idea or this quote that, balance is not something you find, it's something you create. Balance is not something you find, it's something you create. And that creation starts with awareness and then clarity and then design and consistency. So maybe you don't need an overhaul like you thought. Maybe it's just one small shift at a time, one thing to let go of, a strategy to plan your time and energy, and the creation of something different. I hope that helps. And I know it's 1 o'clock, but before we go, I want to give you some further reading. So this will be in your email. I'll send it over so that this can come as a sheet, and it will also obviously be in the recording. So if you want to read a little bit more on this topic, there's some books and things that I think are useful.